Inhale through the nose. Genesis 2 verse 7, and God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and he became a living soul. Beautiful verse. I read the story of a man called Professor Buteyko, Russian professor from the mid-1800s. He was a mechanic in the war, and he thought to himself when the war had finished, if I can understand how the human machinery works, I reckon I can fix it. Because he said, I understand how motors work, so I know how to fix them. Why not the human machinery? That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So he studied medicine, and I'm surprised most doctors make it, because when they're young, when they're first doing their internship, it's 24 hours call 7 days a week. Just incredible. And he looked in the mirror one day, he was late at night in the hospital, and he was shocked at the image that he saw. He was overweight. For a young man in his early 30s, he already had diabetes, he had high blood pressure, and he looked at his shoulders, they were hunched, his mouth was hanging open, and he was shocked at how bad he looked. And when he saw it, he stood up and closed his mouth. And he didn't realise that he'd become a mouth breather. So he decided to stand straight and close his mouth. And he found that when he started nose breathing, he actually felt better and his nose started to clear. You see, the more coffee he had, the more refined foods he had, the more everything got blocked up. So he got in this vicious cycle, so, he'd become a mouth breather. And then he came across a man who was having an asthma attack, and he told the man to shut nicely his mouth. Close your mouth. And the man looked at him horrified because he felt he had to open his mouth to get more air. But he found that when they closed their mouths and forced themselves to breathe through their nose, that the asthma started to ease. So what he did was he decided to study the lungs in more detail and also the blood gases. And that's when he discovered that you need carbon dioxide. Now, we've heard of carbon dioxide poisoning, it's called hypoxia, lack of oxygen, and that definitely is a problem, but also lack of carbon dioxide is a problem. So what he did, he developed this method of breathing where the person not only closes their mouth but holds their breath. Now that almost seems opposite to what you would do when you're trying to get air. But holding the breath at times and then only breathing through the nose, it raised the carbon dioxide levels in the blood, and what that did was it relaxed smooth muscle around the bronchioles and opened the bronchioles. It's called bronchodilator. And Ventolin, which is the most common drug they give to asthmatics, is a bronchodilator. It opens those airways so they get more air. But did you know that the side effect of Ventolin is that it reduces lung capacity? And what does the asthmatic person want? More lung capacity. So most hospitals, I'm sure here and in Australia, you can do classes and you can learn the Buteyko method of breathing. It's called BMB. You might have even seen ads for it. And I know my sister, who was an asthmatic most of her life, she didn't come off Ventolin until the age of 40. Stopping dairy, stopping wheat, two very mucus-forming foods, that made a huge difference. My father conquered his asthma at the age of 50 by stopping dairy. Now, cow's milk is excellent milk for baby calves, but not the best for humans. But my sister, to get off her Ventolin completely, she learnt the Buteyko method of breathing. So Professor Buteyko is long gone, and he was not really acknowledged as a master in his field of breathing, I think almost until he'd already passed. But the Buteyko method of breathing aims at raising carbon dioxide levels in your blood, which relaxes smooth muscle, which opens the bronchioles. Whereas what most people want to do when they're in asthma attack is gas for air, but they've actually got to do the opposite. And it takes a lot of control to close that mouth and breathe, and not breathe deeply. Breathe little tiny puffs in and out so that you are raising your carbon dioxide levels, and it eases that asthma attack. So let's have a look at what nose breathing does. Number one, nose breathing purifies the air. Mouth does not do that. See, what the nose has been an incredible design. There are all these caves in the nose. And if you breathe in air that's got some dust on it, and maybe I did today, especially when I looked at those cars covered in dust. Well, they looked like they'd have been parked there for 6 months, but I don't think they had. There were too many of them. And little bits of dust are on the air. It's heavy. So what it does, it ricochets all around those little caves to loosen that bit of dust, and then pure air becomes light and it goes through and into the trachea, down into the bronchioles. And then at the end of the day we blow our nose, don't we? With all those little bits. So mouth does not purify the air. When you open your mouth and breathe in through your mouth, you are delivering to your lungs dirty air. It has not been purified. So it must be in through the nose. Nose purifies the air, nose warms the air. Mouth does not do that. Nose also moistens the air. It actually gets the air perfect for the lungs. Nose also pressurizes the air. Mouth does not do that. Nose does something else. Nose regulates blood gases. What are these blood gases? The blood gases are oxygen and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the waste from combusting glucose and oxygen at the cellular level. So most of that we want out, but we want to retain some. We have 100 trillion cells in our body. We have 25 trillion red blood cells. And on the red blood cell, there's 270 million hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is what carries the gases, the blood gases. And on every hemoglobin there are 4 docking sites for oxygen. But in the lungs, when we do the exchange, when the blood comes in, the hemoglobin comes in, if it has 4 molecules of carbon dioxide, it can pick up 4 molecules of oxygen. But if it only has 2 molecules of carbon dioxide, it can only pick up 2 molecules of oxygen. So there's this exchange in those alveoli that I just showed you. But there's another exchange, and that is at the cell wall. And again, the exchange must be carbon dioxide for oxygen. So if you're breathing out through your mouth, you lose too much carbon dioxide. And you breathe in deeply through your mouth, you can be getting too much oxygen. Is too much oxygen bad? Well, it can float all around your blood, but it can't get into the cell unless that carbon dioxide is present. So breathing in and out through the nose regulates the blood gases. But there's another gas, and this gas is an amazing gas. This gas is antibacterial, antimicrobial, antifungal, and this gas is a vasodilator. What's a vasodilator? Opens the blood vessels, which means better delivery of blood carrying the oxygen. It's called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is released by the sinus when we breathe in through our nose. So you breathe in and out through your mouth, no nitric oxide. You breathe in and out through your mouth, you're losing too much carbon dioxide. No wonder so many people have chronic fatigue syndrome. You know what chronic fatigue syndrome is? Lack of oxygen at the cellular level. Now I have drawn as if there is one energy cycle per cell, but not so. You can have hundreds of little mitochondria, which is the energy cycle, in every cell. And we have 100 trillion cells, but it's 75 trillion cells that are running like this, because 25 trillion cells are the red blood cell. Isn't that phenomenal?